Super M was created by SM Entertainment and Capitol Music Group in hopes to create a supergroup consisting of various popular boy group members under the company and making it big in the Western world, self-naming them as the Avengers of K-pop. Hit with initial backlash by fans at how the company should be prioritizing comebacks for their already established groups, the group marched on and officially debuted in October of 2019 with their EP and single, Jopping. While many fans of the groups were skeptical at first, myself included as an NCT and Wavy fan, many still enjoyed the comeback anyway and continued to support their favorite members. The news then came up that Super M debuted #1 of the Billboard 200 and is the first K-pop act to do so. Here's where the criticism began. Many people were wondering how they got this position considering the very low American streams. It came to people's attention that SM and Capitol were using multiple bundling tactics in order to sprint their way up to the top. 60 types of bundles to be exact. According to Billboard reports, if you don't know what bundling is, it's a marketing strategy that includes the album, either a digital or physical copy, with the order of any merchandise item. In Super M's case, it not only included this, but it also included sharing album codes in order to get more album sales. People were up in arms about how the company were planning on forcing their ways to a #1 spot. Nicki Minaj, a prominent figure in the Western music industry, has called this out before. She says that buying albums should be about the music, not if it comes with a cute t-shirt. This was when Travis Scott inevitably became #1 while she was #2 with their respective albums, and she accused him of inflating numbers by bundling. For a comparison, let's see the difference between Super M's numbers and the #2 place of Summer Walker. This was her debut album and was heavily talked about amongst Western fans. In fact, her album raked up 150 million American streams. Super M, on the other hand, they only raked up 4 million American streams. This is quite confusing for many considering how most sales nowadays are stream-heavy. We live in a streaming era, so for Super M to not have a fraction of Summer's huge streams but ended up #1 is confusing for many. Super M debuted with 164,000 pure American sales and 4,000 sales from American streaming. This means that 98% of their sales came from physical and digital sales alone. How did this figure come about? Well, that's where the bundles and other tactics come in. Super M came out with individual members' albums and a group album which totaled up 8 versions of albums. A typical K-pop act has around 1 to 4 versions. This inflation, adding on with the redeemable codes and 60 bundles, definitely helped with the numbers, but many called it out for being not authentic. This is when comparisons come into place. It's inevitable and it can show how these numbers stagger. It's known that BTS were the first Korean acts to go #1 on the Billboard 200 and snagged that 3 times. Let's see their map of the Seoul Persona sales. They debuted #1 with 230,000 sales and 196,000 were pure. This means 85% of sales were through physical and digital downloads of the album. You may say that these are similar to Super M's numbers, but this is not true. Boy with Love, their title track, debuted at #8 on the Hot 100 while other tracks on the album also debuted on the Hot 100 or the Bubbling Under Hot 100 chart. This means that they have demand through their entire album. Super M, meanwhile, had Jopping chart at #25 on the Bubbling Under Hot 100 chart. Even non-singles like Heartbeat by BTS debuted higher. People pointed out that if an album is #1, there must be a standout track that at least peaks or debuts in the Hot 100. But that was non-existent for Super M. Their numbers for Jopping were tanking in Korea, even though they have huge Korean fan bases. This also goes to show that there was no demand. Fans of Super M used the excuse that they were marketing in America. But wouldn't the fans at least support their biases? They didn't, because they clearly saw the mistake in the group in the first place. This made people more aware of how fraudulent their numbers seemed to be. Many made the point that Western powerhouses like Taylor Swift used bundles. This is true and people acknowledge it. However, artists like Taylor Swift also have the fans, chart numbers, and sold-out tour to prove that they would have gotten the #1 spot anyway. This doesn't deflect from them using bundles, however. Many people, even BTS fans, called out artists like the Jonas Brothers and Miss Swift for doing this. But then again, it was inevitable that they'd get the #1 spot even with lower numbers. Some pointed out that BTS fans were being hypocrites about calling these numbers out when BTS used bundles. This is a false equivalency because the only time they used bundles was for one show in America. It was second week sales as BTS were already #1 the week prior, and the so-called bundle came with just the album. There was no merchandise or codes attached for duplication. And it's rude how people are only saying BTS fans are bitter when everyone is seeing how murky these numbers look. People are labeling this as bullying when it's simply calling out the trickery right in front of them. No one is calling the individual members' names. It has more to do with the company. The point of the matter is that Super M was made simply to outchart BTS, and that's the reason why some BTS fans were concerned about the debut in the first place. It was SM's obvious plan from the start because they wanted an ego boost considering how much profits they've lost previously. But this vanity project was exposed for the scam it is and is now being harshly criticized by people, K-pop and Western fans alike. They're going to lose more money after the inevitable free fall of the album the following week, and it'll end up embarrassing their brand. Instead of focusing on their famous groups and establishing their own fandoms, they exploited and took advantage of already paying consumers who are looking forward to not disappoint their biases. Disclaimer: this has nothing to do with the members, as I am a huge fan of two of the groups already, like previously mentioned. I personally liked Mark's rap and Jopping, and the other tracks were fine. The members even mentioned how they don't really care about the charts. But this whole thing is about a weak marketing gimmick made by SM to prove their hot shots, when ended up crumbling beneath them. This further stigmatizes the notion that K-pop sales are fabricated. This is going steps backwards to be taken seriously in the music industry. In my opinion, it's funny how the same people crying about Western validation and how it's not mandatory are now whining and saying just to suck it up and deal with the fact that Super M are #1. No one is mad at them. People are mad at how they became #1. If another K-pop group went #1 through organic sales and no bundling, then the sales will be congratulated. It's crystal clear. In the future, I'd love to see NCT or Wavy with a #1 album without discounts, codes and bundles. A bunch of girl groups deserve the title as well, but if it occurs in a fraudulent manner, people will call it out. At this point, I'd like to see Super M's longevity because it doesn't look good for them right now. All the best to them in their respective groups because they deserve better than this. Some groups aren't even getting comebacks or solos like promised, and others are heavily overworked. In my opinion, this tactic felt like a train wreck from the start.